أعوذ بالله تعالى من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد
وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في أرضه روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدم الفدا. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all and appreciate you all and thank you all for coming. If we were to look at the statistics and the rates of depression and anxiety and trauma and even suicide rates and how they're climbing very, very quickly, especially in Muslim communities, you realize that there is a fundamental problem. There's an issue that has to be addressed. Like, why are so many people? I personally worked with hundreds and hundreds of young men. The issues are very, very similar, and they're all battling, deep fears and insecurities about themselves and about their religion, about their beliefs. So definitely, one's identity and the crisis is observable. You could see it on the ground any day, every day. Any conversation that you have, you find that more and more people are losing interest, or people are losing a sense of motivation and purpose. They feel like what am I here for? Why am I in this world in the first place? So I think it's a very important topic, and I want to make it clear that this talk, inshallah, inshallah, we're going to share a lot of value and a lot of advice. It's not supposed to be the solution, in the sense where I'm not going to come and claim that we're going to solve this whole identity crisis in a 30 or 45 minute talk and Q&A. What I hope for it to be is a spark that ignites within you a line of questioning, something that you could start take from this night and be able to start questioning yourself at home, on the street, at work, going to school, to university, whatever it is, so you can start benefiting from this, inshallah. I'm going to give you guys a short little story of my personal experience with identity crisis, and let's say maybe some of you can relate to this, some of you can't. But I remember when I had just finished HSC, I went to study in Lebanon. I went to study Hausa. And from a young age, I sort of had to fit into a whole new society. I was born and raised in Sydney, Australia, and then going to Lebanon from the age of 17, and I'm mixing with adults and people within Lebanon. I was known as the Australi, right? I was the Westerner. I was the Ajnabi. I was the outsider. Now, people don't say this or label you this in a spiteful way. They're not trying to hurt you and harm you by calling you that. It's just your identity, right? You are different from everyone here. So at some level, it impacted me, the way I dressed, the way I talked, the way I'd walk. It was different, right? It was obviously different. But my problem was different. Is that bad? Is it bad that I'm different? Because as humans, you want to fit in, right? So hold on a second, should I change myself to fit in? Then what happens is I come to Australia, then I'm too Lebanese for the Aussies. Tahalla as a fig. You know what I mean? I'm either too Aussie for the Lebans or too Leban for the Aussies, right? And okay, so now I have to be more Aussie, more Western. So see the identity crisis? So what part of me is accepted? What part of me isn't? Where do you think this led to? Of course, I felt some the internal turmoil. Of course, I went through depression. Of course, I went through anxiety. I didn't know why. I didn't understand the reasons. I couldn't tell you, I am depressed because I have an identity crisis. No, I just didn't know what the hell was going on internally, my beliefs about myself. So this took me down this route of learning about and studying identity. Like why is it that I have to perceive myself in a negative way because I'm different? And you guys probably feel this today in school, right? In work, in the office, on the job site, in university, whatever it is, you're gonna feel like, even the sisters, for example, hijab. Later on, you start to get, and I'm gonna go deeper into this later. You might have certain opportunities that might be taken away from you because you wear the hijab. You're obviously Muslim, right? Your identity is obvious. So because this is an issue, and this obviously can take you down this roller coaster of emotions, I want to talk about the idea of identity and the identity crisis in 3 parts tonight, inshallah. And I'm going to speak in accordance to how energized I feel you guys are. If I feel like you guys are getting bored and you're sleepy, I'm just going to sort of wrap it up short and then send you guys home and tell you Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But hopefully, inshallah, no, we will stay to the end and we'll go and open up a Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions, if you want to take your phones out and write some notes, feel free to. There's going to be a lot of information being pumped out tonight. But there's 3 parts essentially we're going to discuss. In the first part, we're going to discuss what do we mean by identity and what is the structure of identity. And I'm going to talk about 3 different lenses in this regard. What does Islam and what is the spiritual element of identity? Then we're going to talk about the psychological element of identity. Then we're going to talk about the neurological point of identity. So what's the brain, what's happening in the brain when it comes to identity? Okay. In the second part, we're going to talk about specific challenges that youth are facing when it comes to identity. In the third, inshallah, I'm going to conclude with a short little story and some positive reinforcement, a new way to look at your identity, merging everything we've spoken about, and inshallah, a way forward. So inshallah, if you do want to, enhance your knowledge in this field, you have some resources for that. Does that sound good? Yeah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So what do we mean by identity? Let's start from the top. At the top level, let's look at the human being, the composition of the human being. The human being is a composition of 2 things, body and soul. Part of you is physical, like this body, and part of you is spiritual, that you can't see it, so it doesn't have a physical manifestation. Now, as Muslims, as believers, we believe that our essence and our true nature is what? The body or the soul? The soul, right? Now, if I were to live my life trying to satisfy the needs of the body, would you call me a wise human being? No, because I'm neglecting the thing that makes me me, right? So from a spiritual paradigm, there's 2 very, very famous hadiths that highlight the reality of your nature for Imam Ali alayhi salam. The first hadith is, and this can help you understand, he provides the perfect system for understanding what is identity, actually understanding anything. He says, Rahimallahu mri'in arifa min ayn wa fi ayn wa ila ayn. That may Allah have mercy, that blessed is he who knows the answer to these 3 questions: from where he comes, where he is and what's his responsibility, and where he is going. Now these 3 questions, if we were to apply them to theology, as in our beliefs, our aqa'id, our usul al-din, it looks like this. Where did this earth and this world come from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are we doing in this dunya? Taklif, we have responsibility. Where are we going? Akhirah, judgment day, hereafter. If we were to apply these same 3 questions to personal development, we are asking, who are you and what made you, what made you you? Your upbringing, your past, your beliefs about yourself, about the world around you. And what are you doing now in your present moment? What are you doing? How are you spending your time? And where do you see yourself going? Now, a lot of the time, the problem that we have, my brothers and sisters, is what? Is that there's a disalignment between these 3 questions. Where I'm from, where I am, and where I'm going. We can't comprehend and understand, or that maybe there's too much pain from where I'm from. So when I'm looking at the present moment, I'm focusing too much on trying to align myself with who I was. And I don't really focus on who I am. And that leads me to looking at the future and not knowing who I actually want to become. And inshallah, this will all make much more sense in a moment. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Salam. So that's the first question. That the first hadith, Rahimallahu mri'in arifa min ayn wa fi ayn wa ila ayn. A lot of the time when you feel that you have this internal paranoia about yourself, it's because who you are does not align with who you believed yourself to be. and you feel like you're living hypocritically. Like in my example, who I was when I was, for example, overseas, who I was did not align with who I used to be. I was just an Australian kid, a nice Western or normal kid. Now I'm the ajnabi. Now I'm the outsider. So it doesn't, so where am I? Am I here? Am I there? Where does that leave me in the future? The second hadith, and this is so powerful, is he who knows himself, من عرف نفسه فقد عرف ربه. He who knows himself knows thy Lord. So if you were to apply this framework, it means that the more you understand yourself, the more you understand, listen, when I say yourself, we're not talking about the body. We're talking about the soul. When you understand the limitless raw potential that you have within you, then you're on the way, you're on route to start understanding your Lord. And inshallah, maybe on another occasion, I'd love to go deeper into this and introduce you guys to the inner kingdom, which goes so deep into this idea of knowing one's self. So those two hadiths. Now, our identity like I said, from a spiritual standpoint, is constructed through self-knowledge and self-awareness. مَنْ عَرِفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرِفَ رَبَّهُ. And by recognizing that you are a spiritual being, that you're not a physical being. You're a spiritual being living a physical experience. You're living right now in this world. When you die, Allah Ta'ala, when you die, you go to barzakh, that your spiritual self just moves on to another body. And then when you finish from barzakh, you go to qiyamah, you move on to another body. But you stay you. In this physical experience, your goal in this world is to understand and to know yourself. That's the first part of structuring your identity. When you don't know yourself, when you don't know and understand yourself, you start to have these waves. What do we mean by knowing yourself? Being aware of your thoughts, the thinking mind, being aware of your beliefs, becoming aware and intentional with your behavior. Look at Islam. Every action that you want to do, the first requirement is niyyah, intention. Because Islam doesn't want you to be an unintentional being. You must be intentional with your behavior. So becoming knowledgeable of your behavior. These things are crucial. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your behavior, your emotions, understanding these things is crucial. And what you want to do is, once you've understood, you now must align it with the needs of the soul. What does the ruh want? What does the soul need? And that's what Islam's all about, by the way. Islam is not just like this book that you have to tick and cross boxes and tick boxes. Well, I did this and I didn't do this, and maybe God, on the day of judgment, according to what I've done, that He's going to put me in hell or heaven, depending. Islam is a way of life that deeply intertwines with the needs of the soul. Because if you broke your arm, you go to a doctor. If you broke the tap, you go to a plumber. But when it comes to the soul, the needs of the soul, you go to God. He's the creator of the soul. No one knows the secrets of the soul. So therefore your identity in that element comes and is shaped through that. So when you start to seek and understand that your identity is deeply intertwined with your faith, not because you're going to be punished, not because you're going to be rewarded, but simply because that's how it is. That's just genuinely how you were created. يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. O human being, not O Muslim, not O mu'min, O human being. God says in the Holy Quran that you're constantly striving for God, whether you know it or not. And you will get there. You will reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So be intentional in that strive. And if you don't, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in Surah Al-Hashr? And be not like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. الَّذِينَ نَسَوُا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. That if you're not in tune and becoming aware of who you are, then you've left yourself vulnerable. And what happens is you start to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you forget yourself. Another ayah, just to conclude the spiritual element of this part, is in Surah Al-An'am, that clear proofs have come to you from your Lord. So, whoever will see, listen to this, does so, see the proofs, does so for the benefit of his soul. And whoever is blind does harm against his soul. So ultimately all your behavior and when you're structuring your identity comes down to Are you fulfilling the needs of the soul? Now let's make this a bit more interesting as well in terms of practical on the ground knowledge. And when I say interesting, I'm not saying that the spiritual side isn't interesting, but I love to look at things from more than one dimension, not just the spiritual dimension, so we can have a better understanding. So let's look at the psychological paradigm when it comes to the identity. Firstly, please, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Now there are many theories, psychological theories, when it comes to the development of identity. But one theory I want to share with you guys is for the very renowned development psychosocial psychologist. His name is Erik Erikson. He proposes a theory of psychosocial development. Basically what he says is every human being goes through different stages in their development. From 0 to 1 years, there is a particular phase. From 2 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years, 8 to 9 years, and he goes into detail what are the milestones that you have to succeed in your development, in your early stages, that's going to guarantee and impact your personality. So for example, from 0 to 1 years old, you're developing your ability to trust other human beings. If there's severe trauma that is caused in that developmental stage, it's going to impact in the way your identity is structured. You might have insecurities and inability to trust others, and so on. But I want to just zoom into one part of this stage, and that is the adolescent stage, from the ages of 12 to 18 and young adults, so just a bit older to 25, 26 years old. And that one of the most critical stages of our development and the development of our identity and how we see the world is the identity versus role confusion. Now what happens in this stage, in this phase, is during these years as a teenager, you're trying to figure yourself out apart from your family and apart from your upbringing. See, we're all brought up in certain upbringings and cousins and family, certain dynamics. When you reach the age of 13, 14, 15, 16, you're trying to now become an individual, independent, to create your own persona, to understand your own world. And you start to what? You start to try and sort of be the author of your own story. You want to start to decide what you believe. This is where you start to see youth start to disagree with their parents. No, mum, you're wrong. No, dad, you're wrong. Because I want to be right. I have an idea. I have a point of view, right? Which is not wrong. It's a good thing for you to start developing your own perception and your own beliefs and your own ideas. So that's what's happening in this time. So you might start trying different things. You might start seeing different people, reading different books, watching different videos, and hanging around with different crews. You're experimenting because you're trying to be independent. Now, what happens is as you're trying to develop this strong sense of identity, you start to see yourself trying to become accepted in the peer group that you're in. And that's why you might have friends that might be from other cultures or other backgrounds, especially like, what we experience today in the West is different to 50 years ago and 100 years ago and 200 years ago. We're so multicultural and mingled and mixed. If you were to go right now to South Lebanon, you're going to sit with people from South Lebanon. If you go to Iran and Qom, you're going to sit with people from Qom. If you go to, but when you live in a place like Sydney, you're exposed to so many different cultures, so many different values, so many different principles and systems, and you're mixing with all of this. Now, on one end, you're being taught one thing from your family and what Islam teaches, and you're seeing so many other things. Like right now you see, all these different agendas being brought out in the West and in the media, and it impacts the way you see the world. So this becoming aware of this phase of your development is important, because you have to understand that ultimately, if you were to surround yourself or put yourself in an environment, if you were to put yourself with people that don't align with the values and the principles that your soul needs, that the soul's thirsty for, then there's going to be a contradiction with who you are and who you believed yourself to be. I'll give you an example. You might go out with a group of friends, right? and they want to listen to music, right? And they put on some music, and you like these guys, they're your friends. And you feel like, but I shouldn't be listening to music, but I want to be accepted. But it's haram. But I want to have friends. But so what do I do? Yeah? And you feel lost. That's just one example of music. Or people want to, at the age of 17, 18, they start want to go partying, and you just want to be accepted. But how can I be accepted? See, the problem is that there are certain values, inshallah, I'm going to be talking about this in part 2, that are being infused subconsciously without your awareness, without you even knowing that it's happening. And so that's why this topic is so important, because once we start to talk more about identity and the different paradigms, you can start becoming more aware of what's happening to you, who you're spending your time with, what's impacting you when you're spending your time with these people, and so on. I don't want to go too much in the examples because I'm going to do that in a moment. And the last bit in part 1 is the neuroscience behind it. This is what's actually happening in the brain. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar. Assalamu alaikum. I don't know if you guys are familiar with neuroplasticity, but neuroplasticity, simply put, is the brain's ability, and brothers and sisters, please listen to this, this is so important. It's the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. So the way basically your brain and your nervous system communicates is there's a neuron and another neuron, and they connect. They speak through energy. We're not going to go too deep into it, but they speak. When, let's say, 4 different neurons speak in a particular way, that's called a neural connection, okay? Now, when you're learning something new, you're building new neural connections. So when you learned the alphabet, you were building a neural connection. Then when you started to learn how to formulate words, you're building neural connections. Now, what happens when we're growing up, we start to have this belief that God created me in this particular way, and I am good at this and I am bad at this. I am good at maths and I am bad at art. I am bad at this, and you start to accept what you're good at and what you're bad at. But neuroplasticity is a real phenomenon. Your ability to learn and change the way your brain is real. Through things like repetition, through things like intensity. Like, for example, Michael Jordan didn't just become Michael Jordan by accident. He became Michael Jordan because the neurons that would spark when he'd throw a free shot, whatever it's called, right? Because he'd done it thousands of times, that connection was strengthened. Now, let's say you read a book. You read a book and you're in tune with this book. Put that book aside and don't talk about it for 3 years. You're going to forget what was in that book because that neural connections were weakened. So why is this important? Because if you understand that through neuroplasticity, you're able to mold and create the identity that you want. You're able to create the person that you want to be. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. But you're able to, by reorganizing, and remember, brothers, for the brothers and sisters that weren't here, this topic, I know there's going to be a lot of information spread out there. The goal isn't to give all the knowledge in this topic. The goal is to now shed some light on different aspects so you can maybe do your research, and inshallah in future nights, maybe for example in our upcoming Muharram series, we'll go deeper into each part of this talk tonight. But learning and memory, adaptability, recovery, all of these things, your brain is a magnificent tool. That's one of the secrets of he who knows himself knows thy Lord. If you understand what you're capable of doing with your mind and with your brain, you really overcome a lot of insecurities and self-doubt that you have. Problem is, it starts with belief. So, to wrap it up, we said essentially when it comes to the structure and the construction of the identity, there are 3 key parts. From a spiritual paradigm, from a spiritual element, your identity must be infused with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because God created the soul, and the soul seeks God, and no one can quench the needs of the soul but God. And the way to truly achieve this is through knowing oneself. It's because through knowing thyself, you are able to know thy Lord. What do we mean by know thyself? Thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and so on. And we spoke about the psychological and neurological paradigm. Sorry, I'm rambling on. Are you guys good? Is everyone all right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go to part 2 now. In part 2, there's 6 primary challenges that I want to share with you guys that many of us Muslims face in the West. And inshallah, I'm going to go through some of them in depth, some of them just brush over. The first one is that where many young Muslims today find it hard to navigate between the traditional values that are held by their families and their culture and their community, and by what's going on with the secular West and the liberalized, everything's okay, everyone's got their own freedom, and materialism and so on. And because of many different phenomena that are happening, like on social media and so on, we feel like I have to I struggle to manage these two different identities. Like, for example, like the example that we gave before, like you want to go out with your friends, right? Where are they going to go? What are they going to eat? Who are they going to be with? What are they going to see? All of this stuff matters to you as a Muslim. For them, it doesn't matter. I just want to go out with some friends and have fun. Wherever I'm going to go, I'm going to go. What I'm going to do. Whereas you have these boundaries. You might think, is this boundary limiting me? Is this a boundary holding me back? Is this a negative thing? And that's one thing that people, young Muslims face, where they feel like it's hard to connect with people that are not from the exact same cultural background. The second is the influence of media and social norms. Like you see there are certain lifestyles and values that literally contradict the Islamic lifestyle. They're completely against the Islamic lifestyle. And like, for example, you scroll, like you right now, because we're on social media a lot, you start to go through social media and you start to create your idea of success. As a young male, you might say success is through having cars, having a Bugatti, having this, having that, looking in a particular way, having a particular income. Why? Because that's what the norm is. That's what the values are. That's what my friends are doing. That's what the trend is. And whereas Islam comes and specifically says, do not dare focus on the materialistic aspect of this world. Yes, you use the materialistic world, 100%. You live in this world at the end of the day. But don't allow your goal to be defined by materialism, by materialistic needs and achievements. That taqwa and piety and God consciousness is always going to be above materialistic gain. And like I can give many examples in that, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going to continue. Third is the third issue that a lot of youth face, or not even youth, even younger adults, is peer pressure and integration. Like as a human being, you've got this innate need to be part of a group. It's called group bias, right? The need to become you're a social being, and when you become a part of this group, you start to mold your thoughts and your behaviors and your beliefs to suit this group. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam says, "Qul li man tu'ashir." Tell me who you hang around with. Tell me who you spend time with, and I'll tell you who you are. Because a lot of the time, the people you're going to spend most of your time with, you're going to mold your beliefs and your thoughts and your behaviors to suit them, because you don't want to be judged. And what happens is, because this phenomenon is going on, this also contributes to the identity crisis. Because you want to fit into this particular group, and with a particular group of friends, then you have to let go of certain cultural values and Islamic values and beliefs, and you don't know what to do. And it holds you sort of captive to your need to be accepted and to feel significant. Fourth is a very real phenomena, and that is institutional challenges. Like, for example, I don't know if anyone here's experienced, sisters might have experienced this a lot, Islamophobia, right? Islamophobia, discrimination. That's something that us as Muslim youth we face. And you might not face this as a Muslim in the East and in the Middle East and in Islamic countries, right? You're accepted for who you are. Whereas here, depending on where you are, whether you're in schools, in a work environment, for example, sisters, like we said, if they wanted to apply for a leadership role, you find that it's hard. As soon as they identify you as a Muslim, it's like there's a barrier that goes up, right? And a lot of sisters, unfortunately, have succumbed to this, where they take off their scarf because they want to be accepted. They want to be seen as normal. Right? And the problem is, instead of coming and helping these sisters and being there for them and supporting them and making them feel accepted, no, we judge them. We put oil on the fire and start labeling. I can't believe you did this. Ma habib, isma, like, calm down. Why do people do what they do? And so this sister might, for example, take off the scarf, or the brother might leave prayer, or might start going clubbing or whatever, and instead of coming to try and make them feel like we have you, we push them away. The fifth challenge that we have is there's a big gap in relevant religious education. Listen to the wording of that. There is a lot of religious education. How much is there relevant religious education? How much are we learning about the Islam that actually makes you feel empowered? The Islam that the Imams came to teach, the depth, to bring you to take you from the surface, but to the depth. These social issues, by the way, that we're talking about, these social issues and the solutions to these social issues, I promise you'll find them in Nahj al-Balagha. How much do we talk about them? And so we've brought down our religion to what's called prepositional knowledge, where we just look at Islam at face value. It's a bunch of actions that you must do, actions that you're not allowed to do, actions that you should do, actions that you shouldn't do, and actions that don't matter if you do them or not. Right? And it's just, in Laylatul Qadr, there are certain actions that you want to get rid of, finish, and in Muharram you cry, and it's just prepositional. Whereas Islam, in its essence, inshallah, I'm going to show you in a moment, is a way of life. It's a blueprint of life. And now the sixth challenge, so this sort of wraps up all of these different challenges, is accepting that you're a Muslim Australian. Not a Muslim or Australian. You're an Australian Muslim, khayr. There is nothing to be ashamed of to be an Australian Muslim. There are many Western values that are powerful. There are many Western values that are good. There are many Western values that are bad. There are many positives that we have living in the West. There are many opportunities that we have living in the West that other people don't have. Right? Navigating through this is powerful. And inshallah, let's go to the last part of tonight's talk, and that is building off of that. There's positives and negatives to both. What are some strategies for reconstructing an empowered sense of self-identity? Inshallah, this part of the talk is what we want to start talking about in future topics, in future Wednesday night programs, in the Muharram series that's going to come up, where this is where we can start going to the juice. But if I wanted to summarize it in one sentence, this would be my summary of how to reconstruct a positive and empowering self-identity. We said that your identity is your knowledge of yourself, understanding of yourself, the alignment of where you are and where you want to be and where you were. To summarize it, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is sufficient. Islam is sufficient to be an identity. Not Islam in a radicalized way, not in a Islam in a us versus you way. Inna ad-din 'inda Allah al-Islam. Ultimately, there is only one religion, and that's not to demean other religions. It's to say that every religion that has ever come across on the face of this earth has always preached that there's only one God, because there can only be one God. Now, whatever you call Him, however you call Him, that's up to you, but there is only one God. And by understanding that fundamental reality, that Islam isn't just a subset of rules and practices, but it's a way of life, then you could try and start to merge your identity with that of the Islamic identity. And that might look different for you as a Muslim in the West. And that's okay. As a Muslim in the West, you might be allowed or not allowed to do certain things than a Muslim in the East or Middle East. It's not to say it's hypocrisy, but the challenges and opportunities are different. The lifestyle is, your upbringing is different. The way your parents raised you and the way your parents were raised, most likely, is different to the parents in the Middle East. It's not to say anyone is better than anyone. It's to say Islam, the beauty about Islam is it's a contextual religion. The Holy Prophet came to fix the context of the people. He came to say, oh people, you're different. You come from different tribes, you come from different nations, you come from different ethnicities, from different upbringings, from different way of thought. That's okay. That's okay to be different. Don't try and assimilate into Western culture by devaluing your identity, by ruining your identity. If a person doesn't want to accept you because you don't want to listen to music, then they don't deserve to be your friend. See where the problem is? That you're afraid of losing friends because of values, but ultimately they don't deserve your friendship. They don't deserve your friendship if you're going to have to let go of your morals and your principles to be a friend of this person. Like I hear these, people like even from different sects within Islam, Shia, Sunni, like you always have to argue who's right. Bro, who cares? I'm not going to only be your friend if you're a Shia. And you shouldn't only expect me to be your friend if I'm a Sunni. Our friendship should exceed this. And our identity should be merged with the needs of the soul, of the ruh, not the needs of the ego and the ana. Not the needs of the pride. And the beautiful example of this, and inshallah I'm going to end with this, and then inshallah we can open it for Q&A. Actually, I'll share a bit more practical tools as well. And then we'll go into Q&A. Is the story of Salman. Who knows the story of Salman al-Farisi or Salman al-Muhammadi? Salman, listen to this. Salman once enters the mosque of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. And there's a group of people sitting down and they're talking. He sits down, he's sitting amongst this group of companions. And what they're doing essentially is, back then they had this tribalistic nature, right? I'm from this tribe, and pride and ego, and they had that. It was a very big thing for them. So they would, they were going in a circle, and each person would, stand up or start saying, for example, stand in the middle and start saying, what tribe they're from, what is their qabila, what has their tribe accomplished, what do they possess, and all of that stuff, right? Basically, G'ing each other up, yeah. But when they came to Salman, Salman was Iranian. And then the Persians and Iranians, the Iranians and Arabs, there was a big feud between Iranians and Arabs. Arabs used to look down upon Iranians because they used to look at them as if they're inferior to them. And they would, look at them as slaves and such. But Salman was one of the closest companions to the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. He was actually one of the only, if not the only companion that was looking for Islam before it even came. He was looking for Islam because he had heard the prophecies. He was very old. He had heard the prophecies of a man named Muhammad that's going to come and bring the final religion. So he looked, so he traveled. So he understands Islam. He understands identity. When they started to mock Salman in this gathering, they started to say, Salman, he's Iranian. He doesn't have a tribe. And they started to mock him. What does Salman do? Salman sits up, and I'm going to paraphrase the story in the hadith. And he looks at them. He says, my name is Salman. Islam, he says, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, is what Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad is the one that dressed me. Islam and Muhammad is the one that fed me. Muhammad is the one that taught me. Muhammad is my culture. Muhammad is my tribe. Muhammad is my lineage. My identity is Islam and Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Later on, what happens is the companions tell the Prophet about this story. Ya Rasulullah, we were sitting down and Salman said this. And the Prophet comes in front of everyone and he says, Salman minna ahlul bayt. You are questioning Salman, Salman minna. And from that moment he started to be called Salman al-Muhammadi, not Salman al-Farisi. He was Salman the Iranian, now he's Salman, the one that is attributed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This teaches us, my brothers and sisters, that your identity, your past, your present, your future, should not be tied to anything other than Muhammad wa al-Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And not in a superficial way, not in a blind loyalty way, not in the tribalistic way. Not in the like how we support football teams, like, oh, I'm a Liverpool fan and we're gonna beat you. Yeah, not in that way. Not in the way that we're trying to beat everyone. In the way that we're proud. In the way that you're proud that if there is something that you're right now, part of your identity conflicts with your Western friends. Friends that, you know, or peer groups that are influenced by certain values and traditions that conflict with the needs of the soul, the needs of the ruh, then it's okay. They don't deserve your friendship. You don't have to assimilate and let go of your principles, because Islam is sufficient and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sufficient. And to build your identity around that, you're responsible, and I'm going to conclude with this hadith, you're responsible to be an embodiment and a projection of a person who preaches for Imam al-Sadiq, a person who preaches for the Ahlul Bayt, a person who preaches for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi through your behavior. كونوا دعاة لنا بغير ألسنتكم. That be those who advise for us, that preach for us, but not just using your tongue, using your character. بحسن الخلق. By aligning your present and your future and your past with the needs of the ruh, which is only presented by the one that created the ruh, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.